This is Trial Transcripts Exposed by Crime in Court with Heather. Raw courtroom reads with my commentary. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Crime in Court with Heather. This is the Delphi trial. We are reading through the transcript word for word from the beginning to the end, and we are still on the state's case. It is now nearing the end of the state's case, actually, because we are nearing the final witnesses. And we are still in the middle of the star witness. I would say the star witness for the state is Dr. Monica Walla. We've talked about how she's so problematic for an expert witness, especially, and we talked about her credibility issues in the episode where we did her direct. We then did an episode where we went through all of her cross examination, and because there was still a lot left, I wanted to break it up there. So now we are going to continue on with the redirect examination of Dr. Monica Walla. We're going to finish her testimony today, and then we're going to also hear from Stephen Mullin, who is one of the investigators who interrogated Richard Allen. So he had, if you recall, he had two interrogations uh, when they like started seeking him out again. So he went and he tried to offer help back in the beginning when, the case first happened, and he was out there on the trails previously. So he eventually went and he told the police that he was there. Well, then this tip just magically comes in like 7 years later that Richard Allen was a suspect, even though you guys cleared him. But whatever, let's not talk about facts. So then now so that was 2017 is when the crimes happened. He went and he spoke with investigators in 2017. Now in 2023, he gets arrested. Am I right? No, 2022. Take that back. He was arrested in 2022 because he spent nearly 2 years in prison before the trial began, and his trial was in 2024. So that's right. All right. So that little background. Let us get to our testimony here. We're going to start with redirect with Dr. Monica Walla. So, I forgot what I was going to say about her. Hold on. Anyways, I thought I was going to say something about Dr. Walla, but I don't remember. So, anyways, let's just get you. Oh, if that's what it was. If you missed why her testimony is so problematic, go back to the state's case episode or part 38, where it's Dr. Walla's direct testimony. In the very beginning, I do a presentation as to what her ethical violations are in regarding this specific case and her employment status. As of now, she is not working for the Department of Corrections. So take from that what you will. All right, so let us get started here. We are on redirect, like I said. So Ms. Diener for the state says, Dr. Walla, there was some discussion with Mr. Rosie about your services versus those of Dr. Martin's. Are you two separate kinds of providers? Yes. And could you explain for the jury the difference? Well, Dr. Martin, I'm sorry, I'm a 90s girl, grew up in the 90s, so when I see a Dr. Martin, all I think of are Doc Martens. So this guy needs to change his name. Dr. Martin prescribes the psychotropic medications, and I provide therapeutic services. So Dr. Martin is the one providing the drugs. So he's the one apparently giving him Halidol. She's not in charge of that. That's news to me. I did not know that. I thought that she was in charge of his medicine. She's not. Dr. Martin is, I would assume, her supervisor or someone that she works with at Centurion. who can prescribe those kinds of drugs. So, to further explain that, you cannot prescribe medication. Is that correct? That is correct. And Dr. Martin is an MD and psychiatrist. Is that correct? Correct. So, when there was a reference to Dr. Martin coming into WCU to address a backlog for mental health services, is that relevant to or related to the services you were providing? No. Let's talk about the best practices for APA and your practices at the DOC. What procedure did you follow with regard to using handwritten notes to prepare your records on Mr. Allen? I'd take a sheet of paper and went to go meet with him, take my notes, and go back to my office, open up the electronic medical records, and put the information in. And then what would you do with your handwritten document? Shred it. That's probably an ethical violation in and of itself, right there. Maybe, maybe not. If she memorialized it within her, I'm freezing. Um, Sorry, I'm cold. I gotta put my blanket on. I have a electric blanket on me all the time because with POTS and all and fibromyalgia and all the things I have, I can never get my temperature right. So anyways, I think that might be an ethical violation about shredding it, although maybe it's borderline because she did memorialize it in the electronic version, but I'd still be concerned that that is an ethical violation that she shredded those documents because that's your original document. How do we know that her original document said what she input in the computer system? Now, there was discussion about rounds, and you distinguished it from sessions. So, when you were meeting with Mr. Allen, was this rounds? No. I mean, if I do self fronts, I suppose I can count it as a round, but I was genuinely going to see him, and if he didn't want to come out, I'd still kind of talk to him at the cell for just a little bit. Now, on average, when you had come to the cubicle for a confidential conversation, correct, those are confidential? Yes. How long would you spend with him on average? Could be 15, 30, even an hour. So there was not a limit, was there? I didn't give him a limit. And so those were not rounds. No. Do you have any reason to believe that your information in your notes was incorrectly entered into the electronic record for Mr. Allen? No. It doesn't matter because you've input it now or you've touched it twice. You've altered it. You'd altered the language. So, because you probably, I mean, I know I did this. I've taken many meeting notes and things and like committee meetings and whatever in my, previous years. And so you would write something down, but then you would remember something as you're like typing it up sometimes. So your typed notes could be more thorough. So I get that. But there could be things, and there were things sometimes that I would write on my notes, and I'm like, that's not important. So I wouldn't put it in my notes necessarily. I might be like, yeah, no, okay. So I'm just saying, notes are notes. And we should have seen the originals to at least compare to the others. And she knew this was to the electronic form, and she knew that this was a high profile case. So why wasn't she saving them? She could have figured they'd be subpoenaed, you know, or that she should turn it over as discovery. I mean, it's not really, it's pretty much common sense, especially in this line of work. And she works in prisons. So she does this all the time. So no, she didn't give him a limit. Do you have any reason to believe that your notes were entered incorrectly into the electronic record for Mr. Allen? No. Was it always your practice to shred your paper notes after entering them into the medical record? Yes. Is the medical record electronic record secure? Yes. Would your paper notes be secure? No. And so this regard, you can lock file cabinets. It's not that difficult to secure files. So with regard to Mr. Allen, was there an increased concern that your paper notes be properly disposed of? Yes. And so that would be the reason that your procedure deviated from what might be quota from the APA. Yes. But see, if you save your notes and lock them in a file, then you don't have to shred them and you don't have to worry about anybody finding them because you've kept them private and you've secured them. This logic makes no sense. I shred my notes because someone could see them otherwise. Well, do you lock your office at night? Do you have filing cabinets that you can lock at night? Have you never heard of a lock? I mean, I don't get it. Moving on. So, did you take responsibility to accurately document your conversations with Mr. Allen in your electronic record? I did. And there was discussion about your conversation with, I don't know if you said colleagues or supervisors before you took on Mr. Allen as a responsibility. Is that correct? That's correct. And so we're talking back in like November of 2022, the day he was due to arrive. I spoke with my supervisors about his arrival and what the plan would be. Can you tell us who those were? Dr. Karras and Dr. Verdon. Can you spell those last names for the doctors? And she does. And so for that facility or company, did Dr. Karras or Dr. Verdon work? Oh, where did they work? I'm sorry. For what facility did they work? Centurion. So same facility. So are these doctors are all contracted, including this witness. They're all contracted under the same company. Could you summarize the nature of that conversation with regard to you taking on Mr. Allen? I don't remember the details. I just know that he was coming, and I believe that they may have known he was arriving on a self-unaliving watch, so we may have talked about it a little bit, but I don't remember anything extensive. Well, did you disclose that you were interested in true crime or even that you had followed? They were aware. She cuts him off. Okay. So her bosses were aware that she was following these cases and was okay with it, with her ethical violations. This company should get their light. They should be, yeah, they should be liquidated and never practice again, Centurion, if that's what they do, is just encourage unethical practices and misconduct. Okay. And when you say you followed true crime, was it only the Delphi case? No, being this case here. Right. So you were a fan of true crime. Yes, that doesn't make it better. This doesn't absolve the sin that she did. She already was in these forums and social media groups while she was treating him, which is a big, big no-no. So just because she's a true crime lover that doesn't negate her responsibility from recusing herself from this case or from refraining from uh being in all these different groups and trying to get as much information she can about it. So whatever. Yeah. So you were a fan of true crime. Yes. Was that topic covered with your superiors or your supervisors? Yes. And so you would have had a conversation about whether that particular interest of yours or hobby would have an impact on taking Mr. Allen on as a client. Objection leading. Sustained. I'll rephrase, Judge. Okay. Did your supervisors have concern about your true crime interest with regard to Mr. Allen? They did not express any concerns. Well, did you make them aware that you followed the case? Yes. Were you able to separate your interest in true crime? No, this question, again, does not absolve her of the crime. Were you able to separate your interest in true crime podcasts from your treatment in a professional capacity? Yes, for Mr. Allen. Yes, and I think that's hard for a lot of people to understand. Bitch, you didn't do that. You couldn't keep yourself neutral on this case. There's no way in hell because you're taking in information that you shouldn't be taking in. And now, any confession that Alan gave, maybe I know he didn't do it, but like just saying if like on the off chance he did do it, or in the alternate reality that he did do it, she still isn't absolved of this crime. Whether he did it or not, this is not okay. Because she's getting information, and even if you don't think that you're taking it in and you're hearing the commentators talking about, well, I hope they give him the chair, if you're hearing that, it's going to somehow, affect your subconscious thoughts about this case. You cannot help that. It is what it is. We are humans, and that's why you should recuse yourself. So, all right, I'm done with that portion of it. All right, so were you able to separate your interest in true crime podcasts? Yes. She says, a lot of people, I think it's hard for a lot of people to understand, but we deal with individuals who have already committed these crimes and have been convicted of these crimes, and it doesn't dictate our treatment of them. Okay, but it is different when you're treating a convicted criminal in a prison system versus a pre-trial detainee who has not been convicted of anything and is sitting there in solitary for 13 months being told to take his own life by the other inmates. And who knows what the guards were saying, because I don't trust them either. Did you handle it did you handle that any differently with the situation of Mr. Allen being a pretrial detainee? I treated him as best I could. Well, isn't that nice? I thought you were going to go in there being mean. But no, she treated him well. Like, this still doesn't make it better. You can be civil with him and still have feelings that you think he did it. It's different if you're thinking a convicted felon did it because they're convicted. It's okay that you think that because a jury thought that too. But this guy has not gone up against a jury, and you're doing the same thing you would do with your other patients that have been convicted, whether you know it or not. It's impossible to switch that off. Anyway, she treated him the best she could, so it's okay. No worries, no problem. Whatever. All right, I'm getting I'm getting to be my bitchy self. All right. So, but I mean, with regard to confidentiality, oh, of course. And okay, you were asked if you shared information from online with Mr. Allen from podcast. Why would you do that? I believe I told him that he had supporters out there to kind of, have him maintain hope. Okay. You were asked about certain stressors that could be impacting Mr. Allen's behavior, like ants in his cell or yelling from other inmates. Are those things the kinds of things that are going on during the entire time Mr. Allen was housed at the WCU in solitary? It seemed to be more prominent in when he first got there and was adjusting. So we're talking December, November, December, January. Okay, and so after that initial period, had things calmed down in the time period of January, February, March? I mean, I'm sure there were things he still wanted, but maybe he was more focused on getting the visits and stuff. That doesn't even answer the question. The question was, things had calmed down? Her answer is, he wanted things. Those aren't the same. So, when you related his significant change in the beginning of April to attorney visits and discovery, were there any other issues it could be attributed to? Not that I know of. Now, in reviewing the information that came as historical data about Mr. Allen's prior mental health history, there were certain things that were provided, like no indication of sexual abuse. Is that correct? So, when we would ask him those questions, he would say no. Okay. And asking questions about history of alcohol use, that correct? Right. So then later, when Mr. Allen shares with you that he had been an alcoholic twice since 2011, that would be different, correct? Yes. And when he confessed, made the confession about his crime to you, and he made a reference to being a sex addict, that would be different, correct? Yes. Have you experienced in your profession where people underreport things that are considered unfavorable, such as this? Mr. Rosie says, I'd object to relevance to what she's experienced with other people. Again, it's just not that relevant, or it's just not relevant. Overruled? Of course it is. Miss Rosie says, thank you. May I have another? Thank you. I'm bending over. Can you please give me another? I would love it. As she spanks him again, over and over. All right, so you're allowed to answer. To people underreport in areas where it's unfavorable. Do people? Okay, that would be an error on the clerk's part. They do. No other questions, says Ms. Diener. The court says, Mr. Rosie. All right, so recross examination of Dr. Walla. Mr. Rosie is asking the questions. Do you know if Rick Allen was underreporting his sexual history? I don't know. Do you know if he was underreporting his history of alcohol abuse? I don't know. Did you see anything in that intake sheet I showed you earlier that had any reference to either one of those? No. It might have been that he was telling you those things that were not true, right? Possibly. So you testified a minute ago that you were able to separate your personal, I lost the word, your personal interests from your professional interests, correct? Yes. But you went to work one day and started searching information in a database that had something to do with this case, didn't you? Objection, Judge. It's not about this. It was not about this case. He says, well, it was related to this. Overruled, wasn't it? Court says, you can answer the question. It was directly related to this case, wasn't it? Somewhat, yes, says the witness. She has to admit it. And you were doing that for personal reasons, yes or no? I mean, we had discussions amongst ourselves about that case because he was coming into our system. So, but for personal reasons? Well, someone was going to get him, so we were talking about him. Someone was going to get him, like be assigned to him. Okay. Were you doing it for personal reasons? I mean, there's always that interest. Huh? There should not be, right? I mean, there should not be personal interest in who you take on as a client. Ms. Diener asked you about these sessions at the door. Well, I wish you would have pressed her on that. Um, Ms. Diener asked you about these sessions at the door or those sessions with Mr. Allen and how long they lasted. Do you recall that just a few minutes ago? Yeah. You said sometimes 15 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. So at Cellfront, I thought she meant just in general sessions in the cage. Right, in the cage. Yes, they can last 15 to an hour. So your observations of him during those times would be the best evidence. Strike that. So your observations of him would be indicative of what information you had to evaluate his mental state when you were watching him, right? Yes. It's kind of a clunky question, but you're watching and you're making an assessment. Yes. And as to whether or not he was feigning or faking behaviors, we've already established that you now have second thoughts about that. So she first thought he was faking, and now she's changing her mind. I'm on the fence with it. Okay. There is a way to objectively test people to help assist in making those determinations, isn't there? We don't have those materials. But there is a way to do that, right? There is a way. All right, at the DOC, you don't have the materials to do it. You just said that, right? Right. So logically, you didn't do it. Correct. Correct? Correct. So you might defer to somebody who had the opportunity to do that? Yes? No? I don't know. Okay. Now you said that one of the reasons why you destroyed your work notes is to maintain privacy, right? Yes. Rick Allen had a video of his cell the whole time he was there, didn't he? A camera? Great argument back. Yes. He didn't have any privacy in that regard, did he? No. And when you moved him out of the cell, they put a camcorder on him, right? Yes. He didn't have any privacy in that regard, did he? Right? Right. They posted inmates at his door when he was there, right? Yes. So he didn't have any privacy in that regard. Right. And they posted guards at his door when he was there, no privacy in that regard. Right? Right. So you talked to your staff members about your interest in this case at one point. You've testified about that a moment ago, didn't you? So when we get certain cases that come into our system and they need to be, they come to the DOC or the RDOC, we have a call to determine where these people are going to be going. Well, did you talk to staff members about your personal interest in the case? This case was not brought up in that call. Okay. Did you ever tell anybody? But that's not answering the question. Did you ever? Did you ever talk to staff members about your personal interest? Okay. Did you ever tell anybody that you worked for Centurion or the DOC administration that you went to the crime scene in this case? Ms. Diener says, objection, Judge. I'd ask to clarify what he means by crime scene because there are multiple interpretations. Did you go visit the Monon High Bridge? I went to the bridge. You went out of your way on a trip to Indianapolis, didn't you? It was on the way. You turned off 65 and you drove over here to check it out. I did. I don't have anything further. The court says, does anybody on the jury have any questions for Dr. Walla? All right, if counsel could approach, please, we do have some jury questions. All right, so, before we get into jury, always before she goes and reads the jury questions out loud to everybody, they go into a sidebar. So the court calls the sidebar and starts reading the questions and says, okay, could the diagnosis of brief psychotic reappear after returning to normal? Ms. Diener says, I'm good with that. Mr. Rosie says, I'm sorry. The court says, no, that's okay. Is it expected or normal for brief psychotic disorder to occur repetitively? Ms. Diener says, it's okay. Mr. Rosie says, same thing. Ms. Diener says, yeah. Did it reoccur and is it normal? Yeah. The court says, okay, when a patient is in a psychotic episode that doesn't include delusions or hallucinations, does the disorganized speech ever present information that would be more truthful in nature? For example, could Richard Allen's confessions be considered information that was more truthful due to the status of his mental condition? That's a big no question, I think, there. But Ms. Diener objects to that one. She says, ooh, I'd object because I don't know that this is the witness to ask. Mr. Rosie says, can you read that last part of the question again for me? She says, would his confessions be considered information that was more truthful due to the status of his mental health condition? Ms. Diener says, that's something inaudible. Mr. Rosie says, I'm okay not asking it. The court says, okay, so no. Mr. Rosie says, not asking it. Ms. Diener says, yeah. Court says, did Richard Allen know the processes around the 3 versus 4 meals and the consequences if he refused more than 4 meals? That's an excellent question. Because just because you say he was doing it for that reason doesn't make it so, and doesn't even prove that he had knowledge of it. This bitch isn't going to know if he had knowledge of it, but I don't think she's the right person to get it in. Yeah, so Mr. Rosie says, I'm okay with it. Ms. Diener says, did he understand? Mr. Rosie says, well, it's kind of speculation. Ms. Diener says, yeah. Mr. Rosie says, I guess. Would he know? Says the court. I don't think so. Ms. Diener says, would he know? Yeah, I think they might have discussed it. Ms. Diener says, she already said, did it go? Ms. Diener says they might have talked about it. The court says they may have talked about it. I don't know that they did. But I guess, do you want me to ask if you know? Would she know? I don't care, says Mr. Rosie. Ms. Diener says I'm okay with it. The court says, okay, but not that part. Okay, what is the relevance to the grave disability that indicates the use of the involuntary injection? Yeah, I'm okay with it, says Rosie. The court says, if you know, did Mr. Allen come to Westville on medications or were any started while at Westville? Ms. Diener says it's a good question if she knows the answer to that. The court says, and then were medications changed? Mr. Rosie says that's fine. The court says, do you screen for delirium as part of your medical status exam? And if not, or if noted, how would it be treated? Ms. Diener says he was not noted for delirium, so I don't think that's a relevant question. His diagnosis didn't show delirium, it's just a category. Ms. Rosie says, I mean, it's just a medical question to a psychologist, Your Honor. Ms. Diener says, but she's a psychologist, not a medical doctor, so I don't know. The court says, the question is, do you screen for delirium as part of your medical status exam? Ms. Diener says, she can answer that, yeah. Ms. Rosie says, the answer is going to be no. The court says, but not the last part. Ms. Diener says, not the last part, other part, because I don't think she's. And then the court says, we're diagnosing brief when diagnosing brief psychotic behavior disorders, what brings a natural progression in an incarcerated individual continue to the next diagnosis? Let me read that again. When diagnosing brief psychotic behavior disorders, what brings a natural progression in an incarcerated individual continue to the next diagnosis? Okay, so that's not proper English, so no wonder I was confused there for a brief moment. But also, I think that's a very confusing question. Ms. Diener says, I don't know what that means. Mr. Rosie says, I don't know what that means. The court says, so no? Ms. Diener says, so no. Well, and it kind of court says, well, maybe it's something, something. It does seem maybe like a compound question, perhaps, but I think they're trying to get at what kind of things in prison can accelerate or um, decline one's mental health uh, while they are incarcerated. So I think that's what the question's trying to get to, but it's not really clear. I think it's kind of the pretrial stuff, says Mr. Rosie. Yeah, says Diener. The court says when when was Mr. Allen diagnosed with anxiety and depression? Yeah, that's fine. Ms. Diener says, if you know, right? Mr. Rosie says, well, she can just ask that question. If she knows, she knows. The court says, okay. Mr. Rosie says, I think she's already kind of testified about it. Ms. Diener says something inaudible. The court says, well, I think they're wanting the inaudible something something now. Mr. Rosie says, well, they did call the doctor because I can tell you it's in those documents. The court says, okay. Mr. Rosie says, but I mean, I think just ask about it or just ask it. The court says, would he have been diagnosed with those in 2019 per the evaluation of self-unaliving risk in Exhibit 303? Just ask that one. The first part, says Ms. Diener. The court repeats, does the DOC require the complete medical records? Oh no, she says we're on to a new question. Does the DOC require the complete medical records for the inmates, or are records through self-reporting? Great question. Mr. Rosie says that's okay. Ms. Diener says he's signed the release, so meaning she can testify about these things. The court says so okay. Ms. Diener says yeah. Mr. Rosie says, I mean, I know the answer to this, but I think the question's relevant. The court says okay. Ms. Diener says okay. The court says, discussing with Mr. Allen, what have you heard or read? I'm sorry, what have you read on social media about it? Ooh, I don't think we can go there, says Ms. Diener. Mr. Rosie says, oh, Jesus. The court says, no. What? Discussing with Mr. Allen, what have you read on social media about it? This woman has already been tested or has already been pretty much grilled by Mr. Rosie on her social media involvement. Well, maybe not on like what she actually did, but just the fact that she was doing it, which is the conflict of interest in and of itself. It doesn't matter what she was posting or what she was saying. But yeah, I don't know. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Discussing with Mr. Allen, what have you read on social media? These guys just don't want to answer that. Ah, because then Mr. Rosie goes, she might start talking about Keegan Klein, who is the individual who got caught. He had CSAM on his cell phone. He had I think that's how you say it, right? CSAM. Child sexual abuse material or something, I think is what it stands for, on his electronics, I don't know, laptop, whatever. He was communicating with Abby. He also, I think, in some weird way knows uh, Logan, Ron Logan. His name blanked on me for a second there. All right, so they don't want him to get into anything of like this Keegan Klein stuff, which is third party culprit, which is definitely not allowed because they have that motion in limine not to have any third party culprit brought in. So that's why this can't come in. But it absolutely should, and it's all relevant because of the fact that she did this unethical or had this unethical behavior. So it's all relevant and it should be allowed in, but they can't because it would open up a huge can of worms, apparently. Ms. Diener says she wouldn't know. Mr. Rosie says, well, she'd know because that's what Ms. Diener says, but she doesn't know what the court says, well, and that's just, I mean, who cares about social media? Wow. He says, all those people over there on the other side, Mr. Rosie responds, all those people over there on the other side care about social media. And the court says, exactly. Those are the people that care. Ms. Diener says, yeah. The court says, did you not think that his behavior would change in hearing what people are saying? Ms. Diener says, I don't know what. The court says something inaudible. Ms. Diener says, yeah. The court says, what would you consider? Would you consider that professional? Ms. Diener says, well, if we're not asking those, it doesn't make sense to ask that. Yeah, yeah, says the court, says Rosie, and then the court says, okay. Rosie says, the state, just tell them the state didn't want to ask that question. I agree. Okay, and then are we taking a break after this? Where are we at? Ms. Diener says, yeah. Then Mr. Rosie says, yeah, I think we should. Ms. Diener says, we're switching witnesses to. Ms. Rosie says, 2 hours of video or audio. Ms. Diener says, well, I didn't know if he was going to do a short witness or a long witness. Mr. Rosie says, I think he was kind of talking about maybe squeezing a short witness in and doing Harshman tomorrow. The court says, okay, all right. Rosie says, and I think we kind of acknowledged that they'd be okay. Court says, yeah. So do you? Ms. Diener says, yeah. Court says, want me to press through and do the short witness? Ms. Diener says, should we do a bathroom break? Well, let me ask. Mr. Rosie says, we could take a quick break, maybe do a 10-minute break or so. The court says, okay. So, sidebar conference is concluded. We go to jury questions now in front of everybody, not just the sidebar. So, the court says, okay, Dr. Wallow, would the diagnosis of brief psychotic disorder reappear after returning to normal? I suppose it can. Okay, any follow up, Ms. Diener? No. Mr. Rosie? No. It is expected to normal. It is expected or normal for brief psychotic disorder to occur repetitively. She says, I'd say so. Ms. Diener, no questions. Mr. Rosie has some follow up and says, if someone has major depressive disorder, can they be one of those scenarios or circumstances what that can happen, or what that can kind of where brief psychotic disorder can? So the major depressive disorder happen again and again? Yeah. For major depressive disorder with psychotic features, those psychotic features can happen again? Yeah. Okay, nothing further. So they're, I guess, trying to say if you find him psychotic once, then he could be psychotic more than, more times than that. Would Richard Allen, if you know, says the court, would Richard Allen know the processes around the 3 versus 4 meal refusal and the consequences if he refused more than 3 meals? I think we talked about it. I remember talking to him about it, trying to explain to him. Ms. Diener? No questions. Mr. Rosie has some follow-up. Is it accurate that one of the reasons why offenders like Mr. Allen go on hunger strikes is because it's one of the only things that they can control? Yes, but I mean, it's not just, I wouldn't say just for simple control, but usually there's, well, I'm not going to eat until you give me a TV, or which is it? Which is control, right? They want leverage, right? But that's one of the aspects of being in solitary confinement is that you don't have control over anything, and so tiny little things like that matter, right? Yeah. And regardless of if somebody goes on a hunger strike and they're not eating, it's not good for their health, right? Right. Regardless if it's their choice or not. Yes. I have nothing further. So if he's so doped out of his mind on these drugs and he's just sitting in a cell, like almost catatonic, and when people talk to him, he's just making nonsense, which seems to be what's happening. Um, where was I going with that? That seems to be where he's at. Like, not like a shell of himself. Like, it's not really him in there. And so, any little tiny thing, like, taking your meals, eating all of your 3 meals a day is going to, any little, anything is going to boost your spirits. So, maybe a meal might boost your spirits when you see it. So, and then not eating it, especially when your health is already bad, and your mental health is declining, you're not going to stay strong. Obviously, it's going to wear on you. So, the next question read by the court. What is the relevance to a grave disability that indicates the use of involuntary injection? Do we have that form? It's one of the prongs for getting prescribed the involuntary medications. Okay. Um, oh, I'm sorry. No, I think Ms. Diener may have it. Ms. Diener, any follow up? Ms. Diener says, are you indicating that grave disability could be one of many factors that would result in an involuntary medication injection? Yes. Are there others? Yes. Did Richard Allen receive an involuntary medication injection for one of those other reasons? Or the other reasons? Okay. Do you remember what it is? Harm to self. There are three things I believe: harm to property and being unable to care for himself and his ADLs, activities of daily living. Thank you, Mr. Rosie. And that happened more than once. Once you do the hearing the first time and he gets his first shot, that's then he's on a regimen. So it'd be now a month later, he's getting a shot until the psychiatrist decides to discontinue it. So it's now an ongoing thing. And in this case, it happened multiple times. Yeah, maybe two or three times. And then he had those emergent ones in between. Nothing like, for like, I have nothing further. Okay. She was going to try to continue talking and he cut her off. Next question. If you know, did Mr. Allen come to Westville on medications or were any started while at Westville? He came to Westville on medication and I believe they were tweaked while he was with us. That is something that I don't think it's talked about enough. When you're in the prison system, there's like one kind, maybe two kinds of uh, antidepressants or whatever it is that you're trying to prescribe to someone for mental health. So everyone comes in on their own prescription. There's bajillion different prescriptions out there anyone could be on, and there's generic versions of you know the name brand, which makes all the different variations. um my This keeps happening to me more and more. My brain just stops working in the middle of me talking. I apologize. It is a getting older thing, getting uh dealing with brain fog and other, chronic pain and other things. I was talking about name brands, prescriptions. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm an idiot. Um, So for name brands prescriptions, you get like they probably only have generics at the prison, and it's probably only like one or two options. So everybody comes in on their own different prescriptions. They come into the prison system on whatever, and they have to wean off of that and start taking the new stuff, which is going to F up their brain and their body chemistry royally. You're going to have bad, and people don't talk about this enough, is that you get bad withdrawals if you try to adjust your medications for antidepressants. And like oh my God, I was trying to wean myself off of this one time, and it was like weeks where I just felt like I was in like a tilt-a-whirl. It was so awful. My whole body was off. So messing with those things, you're messing with these individuals' body makeup and the way that they are already in some kind of regimen when it comes to their mental health. Maybe it's working, maybe it's not, but that's not for the prison to say, well, it's not working, we're just going to put you on this. I mean, they don't have the option to give them all these different things, but it really messes someone up. So that has to be taken into account, and all the withdrawal time and everything that they're going through during the transition from his body, and it can take weeks to months for your body to actually like start to process and maintain after putting in a uh, something that messes up your brain chemistry like that so easily. So sorry, I didn't mean to get on a whole high horse about antidepressants, but you're coming into prison. I think Turtle Boy talked about this too. When he went into prison, they had to take him, like he was on Prozac, and they had to take him off of Prozac, and you had like Wellbutrin or something. It was a totally different product. I don't know if that was it at all, but I'm using that as an example. So um so you come in thinking you're mentally stable. Now you're in a situation, an environment that you've been separated from your family, your loved ones, everything you've ever known, your job, your stability. Now you're in this prison, not even just county jail for pretrial. You're in a prison with all the big baddies that are screaming at you that they want you dead. So that's what he's dealing with. How are you going to be in your right mind? But no, let's give him more drugs and give him Halidol instead. Like that, it infuriates me. He was probably going through an adjustment phase. There's always an adjustment phase when you are switching or starting or stopping any kind of drug like that. So, this adjustment phase, like I said, could be going for weeks and months. And everyone's just like, well, he's not acting normal to us, so we're going to give him injections of another mind altering drug. All right, moving on. He came to Westville on medication, and I believe they tweaked it when he was here with us. The court says, Ms. Diener. She says, do you recall specifically what medication for mental health he arrived prescribed with? I believe it was Prozac. And then when you say tweaked, was it changed from Prozac, or what does tweaked mean? I want to say, ask a preliminary question, may I? Says Rosie. The court says, well, to what? Well, my objection is she, if she doesn't have any firsthand knowledge, she's already testified that she doesn't know, and she's keeping track of his, if she wasn't keeping track of his medication. She did testify to that. The court says, well, that was the if you know. I asked her if you know. Mr. Rosie says, okay. The court says, did he come to Westville on medications? Ms. Diener says, and so if she doesn't know, I would hope that she would tell me that she doesn't know. Mr. Rosie says, well, she testified to that earlier. And the witness says, I said, I don't necessarily know if someone's non-compliant with medication because they can tell me one thing, but I would have to go to their chart and actually see if the nurse signed out that they actually took the medication. Anything further? Says Judge Gull. Ms. Diener says, I just want to know what she meant by tweaked. Yeah, so I think the dosage was changed. For Prozac? Yes. And like why? You have Prozac in your facility. If you have him on the same exact medication, why are you adjusting his dosage? Him and his doctor gave him that dose for a reason. And now here you are, just like la 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 la. I'm gonna mess with this guy's Prozac and see if he goes mental. Just for fun. Let's try it, shall we? Richard Allen never stood a chance. Not with these people around him. Anyways. All right, so no other questions, says Ms. Diener. Mr. Rosie says, he does have questions. Did they offer Prozac in prison, or is it just other generic forms? They call it Prozac, so, but do you know what it is? I don't know if that is the generic form for that, because that's a generic term for the drug, right? Prozac. And now I can't think of it. Yeah. Thank you, doctor. So she didn't know. Yeah. And Prozac, they probably don't have the same, like she's making it seem like he had the same medication. They just adjusted his dose a little. So no big deal, as opposed to changing his dose from one to another, or changing his prescription altogether. So stupid. I don't like this lady. All right. So did they offer Prozac in prison, or is it some other drug? Oh, I'm sorry. I read all that. Next juror question. Do you screen for delirium as part of your mental status exam? No, not until something comes up where it would be noted or needed. Ms. Diener? Was there any reason to think Mr. Allen needed to be evaluated or assessed for delirium? I don't think so. No other questions. Mr. Rosie? Objective testing would be helpful to determine that, right? Objective testing? Like we talked, testing would always be helpful. Yes. Okay, thank you. The court says, when was Mr. Allen diagnosed with anxiety and depression? My understanding is from the community. Huh? That's not even. So you're asked, when was he diagnosed? Does this woman listen? She does this all the time. This is her way of not answering the questions because she doesn't know the answer or she doesn't want to give the answer. When was Mr. Allen diagnosed with anxiety and depression? My understanding is from the community, is her answer. When? Her answer, community. When did this take place? Community. Are we speaking English here? Okay. I can't stand this kind and then she doesn't even follow up. No follow up, nothing. Oh yes, okay, sorry. She does follow up. It looked like she didn't. I was getting mad. I'm getting too irritated now. Sorry, I need to calm down a little bit. I need to go do some meditations. So the court says, Ms. Diener, no other questions. Mr. Rosie follows up, not Ms. Diener. Do you recall seeing references in the intake forms that he'd been dealing with it most of his life? Yes. Nothing further. So again, him and his doctor prescribed a certain medication with a certain dosage to help him with his symptoms that he's been having for most of his life. And the prison system's like, let's wreck the boat here and let's just see what happens. They do that with everyone, by the way, not just him. Next question. Okay, and does the DOC require complete medical records for inmates or are records from self-reporting? So, records from the outside community? Yes. We don't have them. A lot of it is based on self-report. So, they don't do any outside research or work on their own to investigate or whatever, examine, evaluate these people in jail. Ms. Diener? No question. Mr. Rosie? Rick Allen signed a release allowing you to get all of his medical records in this case. I believe he did sign that with me. So his psychiatric records, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be throwing those for psych. Yeah, no, he signed for medical records. So I did notice that there were some medical records from the community in his chart. What does that mean? From the community. Nothing further. The court says, all right, thank you, Dr. Walla. You may step down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick afternoon break again while we're outside the courtroom. Please keep your minds open. Please don't form any opinions or conclusions about anything. You may discuss the evidence that you've heard so far, but please only do that if all 15 of you are present in the jury room at the same time. And please don't deliberate. Gentlemen, how does she memorize that whole thing? I mean, I know she's probably said it a bajillion times, but I wouldn't remember all that. The bailiff says, all rise. The jury leaves. The court says, all right, let's take 15 minutes. They go on a little bitty break. The court says, all right, we're back on the record. Are we ready to bring? I understand we have a couple of short witnesses, and then the following witness is going to be lengthy, and we'll take that one up tomorrow. Mr. McLeland says, oh, we haven't heard from him all day. Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Auger says, Your Honor, can we approach before the jury returns? Sure, says the court. Cyber conference is concluded or is conducted. Ms. Auger says, Your Honor, the state is producing photographs that came from Mr. Allen's family and Mr. Allen. The court says, mm-hmm. Ms. Auger says, I think that without a date relating to these photographs that there is a relevance objection. If there is a photograph they're trying to put in, I really think that it's relevant, and so we think there should be a date associated with these. Judge, let's witness. This witness will be able to testify to the date. That's Mr. Cecil, something inaudible, Mr. McLeland says. The court says, okay. Mr. McClellan says, I doubt this witness will be able to testify to those dates. Court says, doesn't know the dates or they're not on the photographs. McClellan says both. The court says, okay. So Ms. Auger says, I think they could be misleading if they're not all from February 17th timeframe. Court says Cecil has that information. McClellan says, well, it's in the photographs metadata, the metadata from those. Court says, okay. The bailiff says, okay. Folks, we're on the record. So whatever that was a whole thing. McClellan says, my hope is to avoid recalling him again just to get that information in. Ms. Auger says, what if we do this? What if you have something inaudible, which which ones are from that time frame? Then I think we can deal with it this way. Mr. McClellan says, I honestly don't know that they something. Okay, says the court. McClellan is also inaudible again. Court says, okay, so we're good with the dates then. Ms. Auger says, before they're admitted. Ms. McClellan or Mr. McClellan says, well, if I get the dates, I guess she would still have her objection to relevance, but we'd have to call the witness to admit them as an exhibit with our phone extraction. Okay, is that fair? Says the court. Ms. Auger says, yeah. McClellan says, so we might get around that, the state, something with the dates. Ms. Auger says, yeah. The court says, so are you gonna? Mr. McClellan says, I won't move to admit them today. Court says, okay. Auger says, okay. Court says, you'll get the dates and then move to admit them later. I'll get the dates and something. Okay, says the court. Mr. McClellan says, then tomorrow, what I may do is first thing is in this morning, get those and admit those. Okay. Yeah, it's not. McClellan says, I will. I'll recall Christopher Cecil. Court says, okay. Ms. Auger says, all right. Court says, okay, all right. Are we ready now, then, to bring the jury out? Mr. McClellan says, yes, Your Honor. I'm glad that's over because none of that made sense. Ms. Auger, Mr. Rosie? Yes. Bailiff? All rise. Jury's in. The bailiff says, thank you. You may be seated. The court says, thank you, gentlemen. Mr. McClellan, you may call your next witness. Mr. McClellan says, thank you, Judge. The state of Indiana would call Steve Mullin, please. He is on the thumbnail along with Dr. Walla. He, like I said, is one of the people who interrogated Rick Allen in 2022 when they first picked him up and were trying to get him for this. So, all right, let's get started here. The witness is sworn in. He states his name and all that jazz. We'll skip through. Are you employed? Says Mr. McClellan. Prosecutors, investigator, Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. And I want to draw your attention to, so he is an investigator. I didn't mean to skip over that. He is an investigator for the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. They have a prosecutor's office in Carroll County? I guess that's the DA's office, right? So he works directly for the DA's office? Am I reading this right? As an investigator? And I want to draw your attention to your testimony maybe last week at this point about the Hoosier Harvest Store video. Do you recall that testimony? Yes, I do. Remember, this is not his first time on stand. They've kind of been piecing them together in a chronological order, so they might call someone here and fill in some information and then take them off the stand and then bring them back again later, fill in some more information. That's how they've been kind of doing it. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 233 through 243. Do you recall those exhibits? Yes, I do. And do you recall your testimony about observing a vehicle on Hoosier Harvest Store video? Yes, I do. And these exhibits States Exhibits 233 through 243 are the screenshots of the vehicle on the Hoosier Harvest Store video? Yes, they are. And if I recall your testimony correctly, you believe that vehicle matched the description of Richard Allen's vehicle? I do. And what is Richard Allen's vehicle? It is a 2016 black Ford Focus SE. Do you recall a question from the jury members about searching BMV records for that vehicle? Yes, I do. And after your testimony on that day, did you do any follow up on that question? Yes, I did. Tell me what you did. In response to the question, I directed a search to the Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles for a black 2016 Ford Focus SE registered in Carroll County as of February 13th, 2017. So you not only did Carroll County, you did other counties, is that correct? Yes. And what other counties? Sorry, I'm boiling here. I'm having another hot flash. I need my fan on me. Where was I? And what other counties? Or let me ask you this. Did you do the surrounding counties? Yes, we did. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 305. 305? Nick? Says Mr. Rosie. McLeland says yes. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 305. Can you tell the jury what that is? This is a certification of BMW records from Joseph or Joe Pogue. I believe I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Commissioner of the Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Does that document display the results from the search of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles that you conducted on 2016 black Ford Focuses? Yes. The vehicle search indicates a 2016 Ford Focus in Carroll County and surrounding counties with pages attached. And again, those are the results that you got from the inquiry to the BMV. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Mr. McLeland says, Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 305. Ms. Auger says, no objection. The court says, all right, without objection, 305 is admitted. Investigator Mullin, you had an opportunity to review this document. Is that correct? Yes, I did. And it looks like you're about 31 entries on the spreadsheet attached to that document. Would you agree? Yes, there are. Now, this document, it contains registration years of 2017 and 2018. Yes. And so there are duplicates on this document. There are duplicates. Your Honor, may we approach, says Ms. Auger. The court says, yeah. Ms. Auger says, I'm sorry, I don't know if you misspoke, but mine have 2016 and 2017. You said 2017 and 2018. Oh, I did misspeak. Okay. So you'll have to correct that, says the court. So your so they're all, Mr. McLeland says, Ms. Auger says, is that right? I don't see any 2018s. Mr. McLeland says, yeah, that's right. I was looking at the registration. Oh, okay, says the court. Ms. Auger says thanks. Mr. McLellan says thank you. Sidebar conference concluded. And everybody was talking over each other, apparently. Because it's so hard to follow when they do that. Investigator Mullin, I misspoke and I want to clarify something. This document actually displays the registration dates of 2016 and 2017. If you take a look at column 2, is that accurate information? 16 and 17, that's correct, yes. Okay, and so this shows the vehicles registered in 2016 and 2017? That's right. Okay. And specifically, you requested for a 2016 black Ford Focus. Is that right? Yes, that's right. And so it gave you the registration for both of those years for that vehicle, year, make, and model, correct? Yes. So there are some duplicates on this. Is that accurate? Yes, that's right. And I believe there are 31 entries on that document. Is that accurate? I counted them, 31. Okay, and if you take out the duplicates, does that reduce the number to 18? Yes, there are 18. And then we focus on a 2016 black Ford Focus SE. Why did you focus on that particular model, year, and make? Mr. Allen had a black 2016 Ford Focus SE. Right, but the photo that you're and the video surveillance that you're using that is supposedly a black Ford Focus, you can't tell that it's actually a black Ford Focus. And in fact, it doesn't look like a black Ford Focus to most people that have eyes. So, because the time thing, remember the timing, because Alan was already out of there by the time that he was supposedly there doing the crimes. And um, so his vehicle wouldn't be parked there at the times that they say it was. So if they do have a vehicle, it's not Alan's or it's at an earlier time. And this list in has in it, I guess, has within the list different models in the sense of SE, titanium, and SS. Is that correct? Right. And so after you take out all the 2016 Black Ford Focus SEs, how many are on the list? There are 8. And out of those 8, how many are registered in Carroll County? Only 1. And who does that belong to? Richard Allen. I don't have any other questions, Judge. I don't think that's the gotcha moment that they think it is when we know that there's problems with the timeline and everything, but um, the way that they presented it, it seems like a bombshell, right? Like, oh, he's the only one that has this car. Well, cars move, right? So cars, you could drive it from another county, you could drive it from another state even. A car is movable. So just because you think you see something doesn't mean, or you're trying to match it or whatever. It's not the gotcha moment, right? Anybody could have driven a Ford Focus to the area. Okay. But that's not even the point because it wasn't a Ford Focus that they're trying to match. So people from other oh sorry, we're now on cross-examination of Mullin here. So writing my timestamps down, sorry. So Ms. Auger comes to or stands up and asks, people from other counties often visit the trail, correct? Yes. Okay, and there's no gate that says you can only come here if you're in Carroll County, right? That's there's not, no. You keep track of vehicles from other countries? I'm sorry, other counties? I do not. Okay, and you cannot tell from the Hoosier Harvest Store video that model of vehicle is in that video, right? What model? It's in that video, right? I cannot see the words SE on the back of the vehicle from the Hoosier Harvest Store video. And can you tell where it says titanium? I cannot. And there are at least 5 other years of Ford Focuses with similar body types, 2011 to 2018. He knew that off the top of his head. That's good, but I'd like to know the verifiable facts on that. But yeah, I'm sure there are at least 5 others because they don't really change the models so much from year to year. They might change the shape slightly, but not much. And you got that list, didn't you? We checked that information, yes. Okay, you have that list on a spreadsheet, right? This list is only dealing with the 2016 Ford Focus. Right. But you have a list from 2011 to 2017 that looks just like that, only it has additional years with similar body types? It does, but it pertains only to the SEs. Okay. Which you can't tell from the video what model is on the video, right? I cannot see the words SE on the back of the vehicle. So you don't know the make and model, or you don't know the model. You know the make, it's Ford. And on that other spreadsheet that you have, there's another 64 Ford Focuses, correct? I'm not certain how many there are, but that wouldn't surprise me. All right. I mean, I counted them. You could have counted them, right? I could have. You could have admitted that list. It's up to the prosecutor. It is. Yeah. Thank you. Nothing further. Oh, that was great. She's like, yeah, it is. Mic drop. Mr. McLeland. McLeland says, Judge, I'd ask permission to go outside the scope of direct since Ms. Auger asked about this list. I'd like to inquire about it at this point. The court says, all right. So now we're going to get into some redirect. Mr. McLeland says, Mr. Mullin, you had an opportunity to review that list as well. Is that correct? To a limited degree, yeah. And within that list, if you recall, how many Ford Focuses are registered in Carroll County? I'm sorry, I do not recall. Well, I'd have to look at the list to be able to refresh my memory for that question. Do you believe that the vehicle on the Hoosier Harvest Store video that is in that state's exhibit, do you believe that matches Richard Allen's vehicle? I do. Okay. Kids believe in the tooth fairy. Like, okay. I believe it says. I don't have any other questions, Judge. Ms. Auger says she's got some questions here, so we got some recross. And she asks, but you can't see the license plate. Correct. You can't see the model? Correct. You can't see whether it's titanium. Correct. There are at least 76 other black Ford Focuses with that body type registered in Carroll and surrounding areas. Mr. McLeland says, I object, Judge. That's not what the document says. If we want to take a break, I can admit the document so the jury can have an accurate representation, but that is not what the document shows. Sustained. Nothing further. Does anybody on the jury have any questions for Mr. Mullin? And we do. So we have a sidebar. She asks the attorneys to approach. The court says, are the rims or wheels on Richard Allen's Ford Focus specific to his make, model, and year of vehicle? I don't have an objection, says McLeland. Court says, all right. Ms. Auger says, it's probably one of those if you know questions. Thank you. Okay, that was it. Just one jury question. So the judge asks Mr. Mullin in front of everybody now, no sidebar. Mr. Mullin, if you know, are the rims or wheels on Richard Allen's Ford Focus specific to his make, model, and year of vehicle? I can answer that question. The SE model of the Ford Focus, especially this 2016, I am very familiar with. Sorry, I added the very I'm familiar with. Does specify within their choice of rims the rim selection which was on Richard Allen's vehicle. The court says, any follow-up, Mr. McLeland? Mr. McLeland says, no, Your Honor. The court says, Ms. Auger. She does. She says, is that choice available in that make model in other years? I'm not familiar with that. Thank you. The court says, all right, thank you, Mr. Mullin. You may step down. The witness says, thank you. And you may call your next witness. And that witness is Brad Weber. We're going to get to him next week. I hope you guys enjoyed two Delphi episodes this week, and we're going to continue going forward with 2 episodes for a few weeks and see how that goes. See if you guys like it. I see you guys are watching, so and you're interested in this trial for sure, especially since there were no cameras. This is all we have for the truth of what happened in those courtrooms. So I'm going to keep reading it until we get to the end. And we are almost near the end. We've got Brad Weber, who's next. I don't have my other spreadsheets or my other PDFs open. So we've completed Dr. Walla. She was probably the most problematic and their biggest star witness. This next one, Brad Weber, is also probably a key witness in this because he is the one that says that he came home down that dirt road and then Richard Allen got spooked and ran away. And, and whatever. He didn't essay the girls because he got spooked. So instead he just killed them and set up this whole elaborate scene of sticks and things that have been sawed off on top of the girls. That makes sense, doesn't it? No. None of this case makes sense. And the only thing that makes sense is that Richard Allen didn't do this and someone else did, and that it's being covered up. That's the only thing that makes sense. So we will get to Brad Weber's testimony next week. And, I'm just curious. Let's see what else we have. Who's next? Because I'm going to give you guys an update on that. I forgot to look. So hold on. All right, perfect. So going forward, the next episode uh for next week, Tuesday episode is going to be Brad Weber and Brian Harshman, who is, I believe, I want to say he's the one, I can't remember now, but I want to say he's the one that went through all of the audio of Richard Allen where he's confessing on the telephone to his wife or whatever and and any like prison calls to home, things like that. So we're gonna I think that's Brian Harshman. I think he's the one that reviewed all of that and is gonna compile it and basically testify to all of his supposed confessions. So that's where I think that's where we're gonna end up, and then the state rests. So we've got Brad Weber, Brian Harshman, and then the state rests, and we will get into the defense's case finally. So next week we will get into the defense's case. We will start it on your Thursday episode, so that's exciting. All right, so you would think I would be tired of talking, but I'm not. Maybe I'll record another episode after this. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. I really do. You guys, I I love that you guys are loving these transcripts because I actually really love reading them, and I'm not going to sit and read them by myself in a room on a computer. But if I'm here and I'm reading it out loud, you guys, I'm going to read it, and it's very interesting to me, and I think it's this is all interesting stuff. It's good to know that our justice system is the way that it is so that we can make reform and change. So, with that note, I guess I'll let you guys get back to whatever it was that you were doing. And hopefully, you guys like this new format, new way I'm doing things. If you have any suggestions, any, show suggestions, topics for different series that I have, let me know. I'm trying stuff out. I'm working things out. Things are going to change around and shift and whatever until we find a good rhythm on here. That's what I think I'm going to do. That's my goal for the next however many weeks to months it takes. I just want to get us on a nice, strong, solid footing for, what videos you guys like, what you want to see. If we want to do more of these trial transcripts, I think, maybe there might be some interest in the Stephen Avery case. I kind of started that series, but I only read portions of the testimony. I didn't read full testimony, so maybe we'll do a full-on testimony of Stephen Avery or Brendan Dassey, one or the other. Or I've always been interested in the West Memphis 3 case, and there's 3 different trials we could go through there too. Damian Eccles, I really want to read through Damian Eccles' testimony, or not testimony, his trial. because we've seen clips and pieces of it. If you know the West Memphis Three, three young teenage boys were accused of harming, killing, mutilating these young three boys who were like the ages of maybe like 7 or 8 years old. And there's so much evidence pointing to other family members of people in it related to the little boys. But yet these other teenagers who they just happened to be like, I can't remember how they got dragged in as an eyewitness. I think it was they were questioning one of the guys, and then he like name dropped two other guys, and then that's how it happened. And the one guy that did this confession and name dropped these other guys, he had a low IQ and was coerced. So you've got the Reed technique happening on him, and basically you get two or three for the price of one. You get this individual who basically doesn't have the mental capacity to understand that he's being manipulated by the police and being looked at for this particular crime while he's being interviewed, and then he implicates other people in the process, and who other two innocent people. So it's a crazy, if you don't know it all, it's crazy, and I would love to read that. So give me ideas of different trials and things that you guys would like to stream, either trial transcript, read through, or even watching a trial. I wouldn't mind doing a series on that too. So sorry for all the brainstorming. I guess I did have a lot more talking to get out. I want to make you guys aware of what I plan for going forward, because I hope you guys come with me. That's all. All right. Well, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this crazy trial, the Delphi trial. Talk to you guys later. Bye now. That's the end of this Trial Transcripts Exposed. Thanks for following along with me. Like if you want more, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. See you next time.